I have a book. It's not here though. I need to bring this book here. It's from Analog Man. You know the pedal brand. The guy who owns the brand is an addict, right? He's out of his mind, mentally ill. He wrote a book, Origin of Effects. I bought the book, and it talks about the origin, how it all started. Oh, and what caught my attention was that it was a broken table. Cool. Accidents in music are welcome. Torquato even mentions this thing too about the fuzz. It's really interesting.
Yeah, several effects were right.
Here, it's Michael Binhorn, who produced Soundgarden, who went to... Oh, you're talking about Rick Garrett. No, it's an older guy. He's a music guy who recorded a lot of pop stuff from... He's not the heavy sound type, no. You know who he is? Super well known soon. The name will come. It's just that I'm here on the channel and I'm kind of spacing out here. I found Mike Benhorn. He was one of the first to make a YouTube channel that became popular in the United States. So your influences, you said it was Ring Rundown, right?
The Ring Rundown, which obviously inspired the Tone Busters' set. We made a Brazilian version of the Ring Rundown. But my thing with tone is how to get the sound. And most importantly, to bring out what's in my head and make it work as a band, right? I can't stress this enough. Arranging well, Mike, and playing well come first. Yes. Then comes the guitar tone. With the internet, with those massive doses of dopamine from scrolling through Instagram all day, it's very common nowadays, more than ever, to see people very focused on what pedal, and the playing isn't there. Those things, right? So you have to study, folks. Sorry, I said it. I'm being controversial today.
No, and I'm going to say something I heard yesterday. I can't say who told me. But this person recorded with Lulu Santos. And the team had recorded the whole band for Lulu Santos to add the guitar. And the team had also recorded the guitars, and Lulu Santos was going to add another guitar. And Lulu Santos listened and said, let me tell you, this is not the guitar. This is not Lulu Santos playing. This guitar here, everyone thinks I play like this, that my sound is like this, but it's not. Let me show you what my sound is like. He recorded it much simpler, much drier, added a little delay, and said, this is my sound. But the person who recorded the guitars to sound like Lulu plays really well, but everyone hears it in their own way. When you take everything out of the mix, you say, wow, the sound is much rawer than I imagined.
A good example I like to give. Have you ever heard the solo from Sultans of Swing outside of the mix?
No, never. Very raw.
I'm not going to make any comments.
Table solo.
No. It's a Vibro King or Vibro Lux Strat. It's what you know it is. Guitar straight into the amp and the amp belts.
It's a cool tone. Just amp, nothing else.
Nothing else. Maybe there's post-microphone compression in that part.
But there's no little reverb.
Amp reverb.
But there's a little bit there. Listen.
The main thing about this solo is the unanimous comment. The guitar isn't clean. It's really driven. But in the mix, you don't hear the drive. At most, you hear a touch of compression, which is the amp's natural drive. So we have a lot of cut through the mix, right? Oh my God, how I hate that expression. Because it became trendy, and then it started showing up in question boxes, Instagram comments all the time, like, how do you cut through the mix? I say, dear, you don't always have to cut through the mix. Sometimes you have to fill it in, right? If your guitar is playing chords, you have to fill it in. If they are minor chords, details, and comments, then you have to cut through. And this comes from first having knowledge of arrangement, playing very well, knowing what to do before thinking about tone.
You're talking about that solo there. Did it have a natural drive from the amp?
From the amp, because the amp mix is loud. Because it must have been recorded in the same room with everyone. I don't know if it was recorded live. It probably was, given the time. And then, to hear himself, he turned up the amp. And then the amp got saturated. And then when you hear the pure guitar, you say, man, it has drive. It seems like there's a TS connected because of how much drive there is.
And also the way he plays with his fingers, it really softens that drive sound. Right, man.
Yes.
Which gives a lot of smoothness. And it's really a sound that has that drive sound that brings a lot of sustain and little distortion, right, man?
Little distortion and the sustain. ends up enhancing a lot of what he values in the guitar, right? He plays with his fingers, so the treble is much more subdued than those who play with picks. Again, right, technique, who plays how they play. And it's a slap in the face, because the guitar amplifies, increases, shuts up, and plays. Impeccable execution. So for these reasons and others, I don't like clean sound. When others play with a clean sound, I love it. Wow, if you plug in a Fender Twin here and play some finger picking, I'll say, man, what a sound. If you give me the guitar, I get pissed off. Where's the little drive? Can I turn it up?
You're a guy who always uses a drive pedal on...
Yes. If I have to deal with a clean amplifier, there's always a little drive pedal on. I hesitated before answering because I've been in the digital world for a long time for the convenience, right? And then one of the things that, it's a great guitar sound. It's a secret. On the pedal board, my album is at the max, man. On the pedal board, inside the, whatever it may be, right? I use the quad cortex nowadays, but tomorrow it could be another one, right? My album is at the max. Either at the max or at 7, so that it naturally saturates and compresses. And then I gain not only the ability to play hard, play soft, and have a clean sound or a drive sound, but I also gain the guitar's volume knob to adjust in real time. And I prefer how the guitar responds when the amplifier is saturating.
You work more with dynamics when you're playing, right?
I only work with dynamics when playing. If you look at my signal chain within the quad or any other pedal board, it's much simpler than you might think.
Cool. Just tell me where's that signal you used.
So, obviously it varies from gig to gig, from style to style, from repertoire to repertoire, but basically amplifier and cabinet. I choose, according to the situation. 99% of the time there's a spring reverb, because I love spring reverb.
Have you always kept it?
Always, unless I use Marshall. But that's because of the purism that Marshall, as a rule, doesn't have spring reverb. Vox and Fender have it, so I reserve spring reverb for Vox and Fender. When I use reverb with Marshall, it's usually a hall or a plate, which is very 80s, which is what I grew up listening to. These amplifiers are always loud. They're either distorted or on the verge of distorting. And then I start pushing them with pedals. When I want a clean sound where I have to play harder on the picking and it can't distort, I turn on a compressor and clean up the volume a bit. That's my sound.
Because there's something interesting there. Because the sound you have on a quad cortex is the sound, the person. On the other side is hearing, right?
Yes.
Because if you take an amp and set it to volume 8, man, you can't stay in the condo. And you even have difficulty playing and dealing with all that pressure, right? You might not even stay on the same block, right? So talk a bit about that, man, this issue of being able to, with these quad-core R technology, get super high volume in theory, but lower the volume in practice, right?
What happens is another one of the privileges of being part of a generation that experienced both online and offline. I grew up playing with tube amplifiers. My first amplifier was a 50-watt Laney combo, that LC52. My first serious amplifier, right. And a heavy combo arrived at my house, and I was like, why is it so heavy? I turned it on, and then I saw that the volume at 1 was already almost too loud for my apartment at the time, right? And then I started to turn it up, took it to my first rehearsal with my band at the time, and I said, wow, such a small thing. It has such a big sound, like the sound from a record in my perception back then.
What size was it?
It was a 1 on 12.
8 of 12.
But it weighed 25 kilos, 26 kilos. It was a bulky thing like that. And then I grew up taming a high-powered tube amplifier because I would place it next to the drummer and turn it up. Then I started doing shows. The drummer was heavy-handed, so I had to turn it up too. And then we learned that a guitar at low volume is almost a different instrument compared to a guitar at high volume. The way you handle it is a whole different thing. So when I was also very resistant to using a pedal board, okay? It wasn't like the first one came out and I was all for it. No, that's a joke. I like tube amps. I was that guy, right? Until one fine day, a friend of mine lent me a Pod HD 500 to make a video. Actually, for a video and a gig. Because the guy said, look, no amps on stage. Then I called this buddy of mine and said, buddy, are you using the pedal board? He said, no, man, I'm not even playing. I'm taking my master's exams. You can keep it with you for a couple of weeks, no problem. So I got home. I already had a home studio. I already had my monitors. I knew how to record, mic placement. I had already done college and all that. I plugged it directly into the interface, set up the sounds there, and said, wow, this is cool, right? Then I took it to the stage. At the time, I had some H&Ms with AMG pickups. I took it to the stage, EMG directly into the pod, stereo XLR, straight to the mixer. The sound technician looked at me, like Romeo looked at Juliet. Because it was like this, active pickup, zero noise. Everything in line, without any leakage on stage. Playing any of the... Stage was a 360 stage. Cool. I played with a band that covered everything from pop to University Saturday. So everything was there. Clean, crunch, drives, solos, some effects. And that's when I got hooked. So what happens? I brought everything I learned, losing decibels of hearing, breaking my back, carrying heavy gear. Everything I learned from playing, I brought to the pedal board. And I discovered in the meantime that I like loud amplifiers. I like amplifiers compressing, saturating, right? Always in the gerund, right? Compressing, saturating, right? Distorting. So when I set up my sounds on any digital gear, plug-in, pedal board, pedal, my volume is never low. I have the amp volume, which is the volume knob that can make it saturate. But every pedal board has a knob at the end that doesn't exist on the amp, which is the actual volume, your perception of volume, high and low. So I crank up the amp and lower the final volume. In the quad-core, they call it output. All amplifiers have a knob labeled output, which is just the actual volume.
It's like an attenuator of... It basically works as an attenuator.
And what's cool about these pedal boards, almost all of them, is that they respect the original design of the amp. So when you open up a Fender Deluxe, a twin, it doesn't have a master volume knob. It only has the volume knob, which is what you see on the amp's panel. So when you turn it up, you're increasing the volume, the perception of volume, but you're also increasing compression and saturation.
Everything good and bad that comes with this volume moment, you're also accessing there.
Exactly. Then at the end, the output or volume knob, whatever name the brand gives it, you can lower it and adjust it, right? So your preset has the volume just the way you want with the levels balanced.
It's like, sorry to interrupt you. It's like you're in a studio. Your amp is in another room at volume 8, 9, or 10.
And the guy has the fader.
And you're here inside the booth. And the guy's like, hey, how much volume do you want on your guitar?
That's exactly it.
You might perceive a volume of 1 or 2, but inside it's really blasting. Exactly. Thank you for watching this clip from Starling Cast. You can watch the full episode here in the video description. And take the opportunity, if you're a guitarist, to join the largest virtual school in Brazil, exclusively for guitarists, by clicking on the QR code or in the video description. I'll see you there.